All right, so let's get this started. If you had to describe your life story in about 2 to 3 minutes or less, name if you want to tell me your name, where you're from, and then the 3 to 5 significant bullet points that have shaped your life and how you got to talking to a stranger on Zoom. How would you do it, sir?
Yeah, so first off, I'm Kevin or Pyro. Most of my friends that I actually enjoy talking to call me Pyro. So um basically, just kind of going from how I got to where I am. I was super interested in computers from a young age, partially shaped by my grandpa. He always had to have the latest tech and always liked to play with it and kind of show me what he did with it. That kind of planted the seeds for wanting to get into technology. So I started tinkering with computers from a young age. At about the age of, I can't remember if it was 6 or 7, I kind of took two old family computers and Frankensteined them together into one that actually worked again. Um, and then, yeah, fast forward now, I'm a professional hacker. I work for a cybersecurity firm. So basically, companies hire my company to send me out to try and hack them so that I can tell them how I do it and they can kind of shore up the holes. Um, yeah, that's kind of my life story in a nutshell when it comes to that. So
Are you an only child?
no, I've got
Okay.
two sisters.
Okay. I don't know why. I assume like the computer hacker, tinkerer kind of thing is like an only child that like really has a lot of time on their hands for some reason. Maybe that's a stereotype that
Nah.
I need to drop, but I don't know.
I was a middle child, which means I was basically ignored, which is where I
Sure.
got where I got the ability to start tinkering without getting in trouble. Because
Right.
usually a kid tearing apart a couple computers in the basement might not be the best scenario. But
Exactly. Well, at least you said it was workable by the time you put the two together, so you can't
yeah,
knock
it
knock that too bad.
definitely functioned.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. All right. And then if you could extrapolate out the next 5 to 10 years of your story and in your life, what's the ideal situation for you there? Anything on the horizon that you're excited about?
Yeah. So me and my wife are hoping to have a kid here soon-ish. Kind of working towards that goal. So
Yeah, very
yeah,
cool.
that's
Nice.
kind of the biggest thing. I've basically landed what I would consider my dream job. So I'm
Okay.
not looking to make any career changes there. And the company I work for is the weirdest company I've ever worked for, but they're
Hmm.
great.
Okay. Weird in the sense of like just
Like,
new.
yeah, so I come from a more corporate background before I got into the actual hacking part. I did uh security operations analyst as well as instant response. So I was actually responding to hackers trying to hack an environment. And I worked
Mm,
primarily in the financial sector, which is very corporate, kind of robotic, right?
okay.
This company I work for, the very first day I got on boarded, they're like, "Oh yeah, and there's the beer fridge. If you ever feel like you need a beer, just go get one." I'm like, "After business hours, right?" And they're like, "No, if you need a beer, just go get a beer." And I'm like,
Oh my God.
"What?"
Yeah, that's wild. I
Kind
love
of
that.
blew my mind a little bit.
Right, right. That's funny. Yeah, there's a lot. I had an uncle that worked. He was actually in computers kind of too, but he worked with Oracle and then Google for a bit. And I think Google's kind of wild like that. They have like nap pods and personal chefs for everybody and all that kind of crazy stuff to attract, I guess, the
Crazy.
best minds. So I guess there is a little bit of that in that world, the
Mhm.
software computer world. But very cool. Well, yeah. Hope the thing with the kid goes well. That's super exciting. Another transition for sure.
Yup.
But yeah, let's go for the interview. We talked, I think, about mostly fun questions today, maybe a couple deep ones, but we'll see where it takes us. All right, so let's get in
Sure.
the first one. It's going to be tell me in 60 seconds or less what you do in a typical workday.
Yeah. So I roll out of bed, go downstairs because I work from home,
Nice.
log in, and then look at whoever I'm poking at today and just start basically enumerating, doing internet creep stuff, like Google dorking,
Yeah.
trying to find emails, figure out what people think and who the people are that I'm poking at, and primarily see if I can guess their passwords is the number one way to get in. So
Okay. So that's kind of the way it's done most of the time with hackers. It's just like brute forcing passwords, or like what's the one thing you could say to protect your online world that
yeah,
users should
so
be doing?
So that's definitely one of the major ways, especially so I primarily focus currently on external pen testing. So that's everything that's connected to the internet that anyone would be able to try and poke at.
Hmm.
We do also do internal where we actually assume someone's already on your network and we look at your inside network, that sort of thing. Um, but for the average person, I'd say to protect yourself, I have two major tips. The first one is make sure you keep everything up to date, including your router.
Okay.
Because especially if a vulnerability is found in a router, that's real easy to just go find the proof of concept code, weaponize it, and just try it against large swaths of the internet. Like that's another thing I'd like to mention is a lot of people have the mentality of, well, I'm just little old me. Who'd want to hack me? It's not about who you are. It's about the fact that you're hackable. It's not
Right.
specifically targeted most of the time.
Okay.
But number one, keep all your crap up to date.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then number two is get a password manager.
Okay.
Absolutely. I do
Yep.
have a few suggestions there. Bitwarden is what I use because it's free,
Okay.
but other ones out there that are paid, it's
Yeah.
whatever you want to use, just use it because
Okay.
it does help a ton.
Yeah. I use LastPass, so that definitely helps
Yep,
with all my websites. Yeah.
yep, that's what we
Too
use
many
at work.
passwords to remember. Yeah. Generate the longest, scariest password for me that no one could hack. Yeah, that's my goal.
Yep, yep.
Cool.
Minimum of 16 characters, I'd say.
Okay. 16 is the cutoff. All right. That's good to know. That's good practical tips for the audience and myself for sure. Next fun question is going to be, tell me one thing you habitually overspend on, but you don't regret at all.
Computers.
Okay, that's a dead shot. Yeah, for
Lots of
sure.
computers.
What
I've
are
got,
yeah, what are like the Ferraris of computers that people like to think
oh,
of? Yeah.
so the Ferraris of computers generally will be your custom built gaming PCs that you
Okay.
put together yourself.
Right.
Specifically, like ones with custom liquid cooling loops, because those are always cool, especially if they've
Jeez.
got the hardline tubes, because those like you actually have to bend yourself into the right angles and
Oh my gosh.
it gets nuts quick.
Yeah.
I wish I could say I had a custom liquid loop in my PC, but I do not.
One day. Yeah,
One
that's
day,
awesome.
I priced it out once, and I was like, oh, it can't be that bad. And I'm like, oh, it's gonna be like $1,000 with cooling equipment. Good God.
Okay, I've heard of hobbies that are way more. My brother's into photography, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know if I should get this $5,000 or $10,000 camera." I'm like, "Wait, what? Did you say $10,000 camera? Like, what are you talking about?" Yeah,
Yes.
but computers, you expect that to get pretty pricey as well. So,
Yep, they certainly can. So yeah, I've got the primary desktop. I've got a gaming laptop tucked away in a corner somewhere.
okay.
I've got my framework laptop that I use all the time. Um, got a couple of servers sitting in the basement that are running.
Hmm.
And I've got the Steam Deck, which I've been having a lot of fun hacking on. So
Okay. Are you an old computer guy, or sorry, computer game guy, or newer stuff like I don't know, Overwatch and COD and stuff, or do you like retro games like Mario and all that stuff, or both?
uh mostly a modern gamer, but
Okay.
um don't shy away from the retro stuff either.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
not the biggest fan of COD, just because I'm not the biggest fan of Activision Blizzard. But,
Oh, okay. What's your
but
beef with them? Just the
oh,
monopoly on everything? Is that a can of
eh,
worms? I don't know.
a little bit of that, but
Yeah.
also just like a lot of the stories coming out about like misconduct in the workplace, like
Mm.
things like cube crawling underneath people's desks and trying to see stuff. Yeah, just
Wow.
a whole lot of not so great stuff. At
It's just,
BlizzCon, they had a
yeah.
room that they literally called the Cosby Room. So
Okay. Says
it's
all you
yeah,
need to know.
that's really all
Yeah.
you need to know. It's that's the one thing Microsoft is trying to acquire them currently,
Hmm.
Activision Blizzard that is.
Hmm.
And it's the one thing I'm like, yeah, this might be kind of monopolistic, but Microsoft can't do much worse. So
Right. Sure. Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow. That's wild. These people be getting down in weird ways at these
yeah,
conferences. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, interesting. Question three is going to be, what is the worst advice you've ever gotten in your life?
That would be the advice of find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Completely
Hmm.
false.
Completely false. Oh, I
Completely
like.
false.
What's
Don't get
the?
me wrong.
Yeah.
Finding a job, turning what you love into a job is fine, and you'll definitely never be like miserable doing that. However, what you'll find is the thing that you really enjoy doing becomes a job. So,
Yeah.
and that gets a
Right.
little, that gets a little,
Right.
especially if you're trying to do it off hours and on hours, then you start getting burned out.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I'd like to turn that on its head from get a job, do- get a job doing what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, to get a job that pays the bills and that you don't hate doing.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
like you
That's
don't
the
want to be
realistic
miserable at
version.
work. Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to be miserable at work. You don't want to dread going to work every day,
Yeah.
but you don't have to like your work doesn't have to be your number one passion, right?
Mm. That's a very important statement for any high school or middle schooler. I think we attach so much of our identity to work and that we have to be passionate about it. And if you don't wake up just with that glint in your eye every morning, like you feel like a bad person, right? So
Hmm.
that's some realistic advice. Find something that you don't hate doing that pays the bills and that maybe allows you to express your passions outside of work. I think that's pretty well stated. How do you think you've avoided that trap? Because you like computers from an early age and you work in
Hmm.
somewhat
Oh,
adjacent
I
world.
didn't
So
avoid that trap. That's the problem.
okay, so that's why you're speaking to this experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I still like playing with computers. I do I run a home lab. I've got my own movie streaming server that all my friends and family call Kevin Netflix, basically, where I have
Okay.
movies that I've totally acquired the license for. And I put them up on a streaming server and just share them with friends and family.
Right.
I've got that, and I've got my own like kind of Google Drive type thing that's all
Okay.
self-hosted. But I definitely don't hack for fun as much as I used to ever since I got this job, just because
Okay.
I do it all day every day. So that's
Yeah.
one of the last things I want to do when I get off the clock. So I've been finding I've actually been getting back into gaming a little bit more heavily than I had been. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. They have all those like personal streaming services and things that you got with your family and friends. I like that. Cool. And then next question is going to be, if you didn't have to sleep, what would you do at that time instead?
learn.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things about the cybersecurity field in general is
Hmm.
you never stop learning.
Wow.
So if you're one of those people who like will get bored of things easily,
Right.
definitely think about the cybersecurity field because
Right.
it won't be boring for long.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I
The
feel like if you
changes,
if you check out for a month, you might become completely obsolete. I feel like in that world,
yep, it's a very quick moving
Hmm.
uh world, and I think it's fun. Every day is a puzzle basically.
Hmm.
But yeah, I definitely, spend the time kind of learning probably more about computers, kind of getting a little bit deeper into the weeds about, how the operating systems work, how memory works a little bit better. I have a kind of a basic understanding of it.
Hmm.
Um, but then you start, looking at people like the guys who discovered the Rowhammer exploit, which is a really interesting just exploit that deals with just how RAM itself works on a physical level, like just the
Okay.
laws of physics around RAM. Um,
Wow.
which it turns out if you flip a bit on RAM back and forth between 1 and 0 fast enough, it starts affecting the bits around it because of the electromagnetic field of physically turning that bit. It's
Wow.
I'm like, man, I want to know how they thought of that.
This is like 4D chess hacking. This
Yeah,
is like you're
exactly.
hacking physical laws of nature. Wait, what?
Exactly,
Oh
exactly.
my
It's
God.
nuts.
That's one step removed from magic. Oh my
Yeah,
God, that's
basically,
crazy.
it might as well be
It
magic
might
for
as
as much
well
as I
be.
understand it.
Yeah, right.
So,
There is some quote about that. Any sufficiently advanced technology is the same as magic. I forget who said
yep,
that, but yeah,
yep.
that's wild. Oh my gosh. So what's your whole take on like quantum computers? Is that going to be a thing? Is that pipe dream? Is that going
That's
to be
already
worldwide? Yeah.
yeah. So that's already a thing.
Yeah.
And they're being used in very, very specific, mostly scientific applications right now.
Right.
Um, I don't think. you'll see a quantum processor, you know, being used instead of like your Intel or AMD right now,
Mhm.
or anytime in the foreseeable future,
Okay.
because just based on the way quantum computers work, they're very, very good at certain things,
Right.
but then not so good at other things. So yeah, for like certain workloads, they do it infinitely faster than traditional computers.
Right.
But then for other workloads, traditional computers are actually faster.
Hmm.
So if we do see
Okay.
a consumer like quantum computing unit,
Yeah.
it'll
It'd be.
be probably more in the form of like an add-in card, like a graphics card,
Huh.
versus running the actual computer itself.
That's interesting. Yeah, like a dual use kind of thing.
Hmm.
So that would completely break a lot of like encryption issues, right? If you could just have a quantum computer that tests every combination of ones and
Hmm.
zeros at the same time simultaneous, every password is immediately unlocked, is it not? No matter how long it is.
It depends on a couple of things. So there are a few encryption algorithms that are quantum safe
Oh,
already.
oh.
Um, the long and or the short of it is anything that uses public-private key encryption, which is the encryption that should be used most of the time anyway,
Mm-hmm.
is relatively safe. But then any sort of hashing algorithm, so the difference between hashing and
Mm-hmm.
encryption is reversible, right? Encryption you
Mm-hmm.
well, not really reversible, but encryption it's meant to be kind of like a two-way thing versus hashing is a one-way thing. So encryption, think of like accessing your bank account on a website, right? Your connection there is encrypted versus hashing is think about a website storing your password for later use,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So any hashing algorithm is basically defeated immediately though.
Yeah. Okay.
So so it becomes way more important to try and secure those databases that actually hold those password hashes,
Right.
which is what a lot of these breaches end up getting is the database full of password hashes.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, there's so much of this world that I don't know. You spoke about learning if you didn't have to sleep. Is
Hmm.
there a way that you find you acquire information the best, or what's your learning strategy? Or if you had to learn a skill, like how do you tackle that? Is there a way, like in your job, you hack computers and hack things?
Hmm.
Do you hack learning in a certain way,
Hmm.
like you do it routinely or something?
Yeah. So what I tend to do is so the whole point of learning is forming new neural paths in your brain, right?
Right.
Um, so the best way to do that is well, first of all, you'll hear a lot of people say, well, you have to figure out what type of learner you are. Are you visual, audio, kinesthetic, whatever?
Right.
That doesn't matter as much.
Mm-hmm.
What matters is you have to learn the same thing through different methods, and then it'll become more set in your brain. So
Mm-hmm.
what I tend to do, especially if I need to learn something for work, like I'm running up against this system, I need to kind of learn how it works in order to figure out how to hack it. What I'll do is I'll read the documentation for it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll try to find some way to make it an activity, right? So like um for example, here's this exploit, here's why it works on this system, here's why it's not working on your system, and then I'll actually spin up the system it is working on to actually physically do the exploit so that I can understand it better to then take it to the system I'm actually targeting.
Hmm. Okay, you like make a model or something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
it's
fascinating.
just it's learning about something in more than one different way.
Right.
So like reading it and then watching a video on it, or reading it and then
Hmm.
doing some sort of activity around it, or
Right.
reading it and then hearing someone explain it. Yep.
Cool. I was just curious about. I feel like everyone in the world is usually trying to learn something, and everyone's got different strategies. And I heard
Hmm.
teaching is a very useful strategy for learning stuff. So
Hmm.
very cool.
Hmm.
So I'm always curious what people respond on that, pose with that. Because so much of life is about, I guess, the value of how quickly you learn something because of how much of life has changed, right? So
Absolutely.
cool. Last two is going to be a little bit more serious potentially here. Is going to be, what harmful things do you think are being taught to children today?
Uh, I can't speak for worldwide, but at least here in the US, the number one disservice we're doing children in school is teaching them that failure is a negative outcome.
Mm-hmm.
You're teaching them that they should succeed at everything they try, and that if they
Mm,
don't, it's bad. And that's not how the human brain works. You learn
mhm.
through trying and trial and error.
Right.
So, and it's this whole, you study for the test, you take the test, if you fail the test, you get a bad grade. Boom, you're done.
Mhm.
That's horrible for
Right.
trying to teach how to learn from failure. So that's the number one thing,
Yeah.
is that we're teaching kids that failure is something that should be avoided and feared, when in reality failure is the number one way you're going to learn new things.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. So we should turn our ABC, whatever grade system into F is at the top and then D and then C, just invert it.
Something like that. Some, I don't know if that necessarily is
F
the
is
answer,
for fun. Yeah. It's
yeah,
like,
but some sort of system where
yeah.
failure isn't the worst thing in the world, because
Right.
it's not. You're gonna fail. It's part of life. You have to learn how to learn from your failure.
Right.
And I feel like school does the exact opposite. It teaches you to try and avoid failure as much as possible, when really
Right.
you should embrace it and learn from it.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite failure of yours in your own life? Something that you maybe tried to
Oh,
do or learn and just never worked out or
um, so this was back when I was doing SOC analyst stuff. I was
Mhm.
the primary lead on a project for spinning up a sandbox where we'd run malware samples in just to see what they do, how they operate, and we can get like all that data back and start looking for those indicators of compromise on our own machines so we can see if
Mhm.
they're protected. Um, to do this, we needed a server in the data center. So we had a server, and I was trying to set it up, and I was doing the network configuration. Um, hadn't had my coffee yet that morning, and I had set the IP address for the network card to the
Mhm.
IP address of the gateway of the entire data center, which means my server was trying to impersonate the entire gateway to the entire data center, and everything went down. Email went down,
Oh,
fax went down, all of our websites went down, like everything was just dead, and no one could figure out why. And I was like, oh no.
I think I did that, guys. Yeah. Whoops.
It was a good hour before we figured out what happened, and then we got it fixed. But
Oh my gosh.
I don't yeah, that was the largest company I'd worked for. So I
Hmm.
don't want to think about how much money that
Yeah, that's the
cost.
thing. Yeah.
Ugh.
That's a lot
So
of money out
that's when
there.
I learned,
Yeah.
you double check what you're typing before you hit enter.
Right. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh no, that's
Yeah,
good. Live and
yeah,
you
but
learn, that's for sure.
I
Um,
was absolutely sure I was getting fired for that, but they kept me around for a little bit longer. So
oh, oh, they believed in you. You must have been a
they
great
did.
employee before
I
that, I
must have.
guess.
I must
Yeah,
have.
that's awesome. And then last question of this episode before we get to the wrap up is going to be, what kind of life-changing item can you buy for less than, sorry, $50?
Um, I had one for this. I think I'm gonna go with a Raspberry Pi. At least when it's available, you can buy it for less than $50.
Right.
What's
I
great about that is it gives you just this nice little cheap computer to
right,
play with. You can learn on it
right.
basically. Then it's a great way to get into the IT field. It's a great way to learn,
Okay,
a little bit of coding, a little bit of Linux administration, some
okay.
networking.
I
So
feel like my brother
especially
has one and he just uses it for gaming. Is that like a thing?
you can,
Yeah.
it's a little kind of weak for any sort of hardcore gaming,
Okay.
but you can. One of the things you can do is run like uh retro game emulators on it.
That's what he does.
Yep, you
Yeah.
absolutely can do it for that. I've had a couple of friends actually use it to build an arcade cabinet for retro
Oh,
gaming
hmm.
and used it as its brains. But yeah, I
Interesting.
mean, if you're at all interested in trying to get into IT or anything like that, because it's a great field to get into, and
Hmm.
quite frankly, a lot of people will tell you you absolutely need a 4-year degree to do anything worthwhile. Well,
Hmm.
getting into IT, you really don't.
Right.
Um, you just need some experience, and a little $35 Raspberry Pi is a great way to build a little bit of experience, play around, do some learning. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, I think that is pretty good advice. It doesn't have to be the most expensive things in life that are very life changing, right? So,
Hmm.
um, That's cool. If you do, like, if and when you have a kid, is there any specific field that you would guide the kid into pursuing, or is it all based on their interests? What are your thoughts on parents and kids' career relationship? I don't know if that's the thing. Did your parents make
Yeah.
you choose a certain path or no?
Nah, I'll do basically kind of what my parents ended up doing with me as far as career guidance is find what you want to do and start working towards it. And if it turns out that's not what you actually want to do, cool. Try something else.
Well,
And that's
yeah,
kind of what I went to school,
yeah.
just a community college, for computer networking. I thought I wanted to be a network engineer.
Hmm.
Um, and that's actually where my professor told me, networking is basically just hacking 101. And I was like, oh, hacking, you say?
Wow. Yeah, I like that
um,
word. Yeah.
um, but yeah, and that's the only like official schooling I got was that 2-year community college. I never went to a 4-year university.
Hmm.
Um, and quite frankly, if you want to get into cybersecurity, doing a cybersecurity course at a 4-year university is a disadvantage because they're so
Mm,
awful.
right,
Like, I've got a couple of friends doing it now, and
right.
the course material is just not good.
Okay.
Just
Interesting. Yeah.
the university setting can't keep up with the cybersecurity field. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
better to get the basics of something, whether you go for, a couple of coding courses and maybe a networking course or whatever. You just get a couple of basics under your belt. Then it's about just getting some experience, doing there's a lot of free online learning stuff for cybersecurity, like Blue Team Labs online if you're interested in doing like more instant response, kind of good guy, security guy on the network type thing.
Hmm.
There's Hack the Box if you want to start poking at some vulnerabilities legally, without having to break the law and without having
Right.
a job in it, right?
Right.
So,
Right. Okay. Cool. Well, I always kind of end with this question, but if you could ask a stranger any question in the world, you could conjure up a stranger you meet off the street or in a certain situation, but for whatever that means to you, if you could ask a stranger any question in the world, nothing was too superficial or deep, what would you ask and what would you want to know about your fellow human?
oh, that's a good one. Um, what do you want to do that you can't do right now?
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. What do you want to do that you can't? Yeah, because it'd be interesting to know like what's preventing them from that ultimate. Yeah. What the
And that
barrier
that would
is.
that would be the follow up is why can't you?
Right. Yeah. I feel like a lot of what we deem is impossible or whatever, our reason for our can't is probably not as hard set as we think. So that would be interesting to pry into that. Yeah, a little bit.
It's amazing what you can figure out when you have
Yeah,
to.
yeah, exactly. What's that other? There's another principle. It's like your work expands or contracts to whatever like time constraint you have, right? So it's like
Hmm.
if you give yourself 3 weeks to do this project, it's gonna take 3 weeks. If you the deadline is now a week, it's gonna get done in a week, right? So
Yup.
it
Now,
expands or contracts to
what
whatever.
your mental state's going to be at the end that might be
Right,
different,
that'll be
but
different. Yeah, that'll be very different. How
yeah.
caffeinated and how sleepy you are. Yeah, that's very different. The
Yep.
same output though. Yeah,
Yep.
input, but okay. Yeah, what do you want to do and what's preventing you from doing it? I like that. I should steal that for the old question bank here in the future. But all right, Pyro, any final words for me or the audience or anything today before we kind of sign off?
Um, yeah, I think I'm good.
Cool. Well, thank you for the interview today and taking the time to talk to me. To everybody out there listening, I thank you for your support. This is Tyler telling you to go talk to a stranger. Peace.